Dune Part 2, in one word, transcendent. Let's talk about it.
Have you ever had a dream about your first ride?
Don't try to impress anyone. You're brave, we all know that. Be simple. Be direct.
Me and Dune have a very love-hate relationship. I'm not a huge fan of the Dune franchise as a whole. The 1984 film, I was very young when that film came out, and I remember being in my early teens when I actually got a chance to watch it, and I wasn't a big fan. I didn't enjoy the visuals, I didn't enjoy the sandworms. It was just something that I just didn't enjoy. It was like a whole bunch of things that I remember vaguely from that 1984 Dune picture that I just was not a fan of. I was a big sci-fi, fantasy, fun film lover back then. So things like Star Wars was fast moving action. A lot of Dune was a lot of talking, a lot of boredom to me, at least as a kid. I just didn't enjoy that film as much as I thought I would, as much as everyone else did. Then we got the 2021 version that came out, and I can honestly say when I first saw it, I wasn't a huge fan of that as well. And what I realized after watching it again last week before I went and saw part two was the first film was a lot more political. It was very dialogue heavy, and it was setting up a lot of what's going to happen in part two. So I understood that. I understood at the end of watching part one. The first time I watched it, I was like, man, I'm excited to see part two, to see how they continue with the story, because it was pretty much the origin story, right? And the origin story of every trilogy really is generally the worst part of the trilogy for me. I don't enjoy the setup. I enjoy getting to the action. Part two got to the action. We pretty much pick up right at the end of part one after Paul Atreides had that wonderful knife fight with Jameis, and he killed him at the end of part one, him and his mother, Lady Jessica. They then get taken in by the Fremen. What I loved about part two the most was its move away from the political, at least for the most part. I would say the first two acts of part two moves away from political, but then it moves into this very religious heavy overtone of Paul Atreides being the Messiah. Everyone is saying he's the chosen one, kind of in the vein of Matrix, and a lot of these movies have taken from Dune, from the source material of the Dune books, to create their own worlds. And Dune and Denis Villeneuve, he built a wonderful world. This movie is beautiful. That is one of the best things about the film, is how beautiful the movie looks, how beautifully it's shot, how there's really no wasted motion in this film. That's one of the things I really enjoyed about it, was the fact that it just seemed as though every shot had a purpose, every shot had a meaning, and it just looked wonderful. Seeing it on the big screen, I watched Dune 1 on HBO Max. I have a pretty big TV, and it still doesn't do it any justice as seeing it in the big screen. I didn't get to see it in IMAX, but I did get to see it on a very large screen at my local movie theater. And it just was wonderfully shot, wonderfully directed. And then another big plus of the movie, another positive of this movie, is just the cast. This is a cast of all stars. We have Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Josh Brolin. I'm trying to think of Austin Butler, who was fantastic in this film. Austin Butler came in and tried to steal the film as the character whose name I can't think of right now, but Austin Butler, the cast, Timothy Chalamet really stepped his game up. You don't see him at the end of the film as this whiny little kid, and he never really was that in the first film as well. But he became the one. He became the chosen one by the end of this film. And that's another thing I really loved about the film was just the wonderful cast, the wonderful acting, and just the direction of everyone in this film. And I want to say this before I continue, is I'm not a film critic. I don't like I don't understand how to make a film. I don't understand how to edit a film. So I will not get on camera and criticize the editing and all that stuff. All I can say is what I see. And what I saw was just this wonderfully shot film. It did not look like it was green screen, but of course there's no way you can make those effects practical effects. And maybe that was just the film that he decided to use for the movie, but it looked wonderful. Every aspect of this movie, it looked phenomenal. I was so in awe of the story, the scope of how they grounded it all, but at the same time made it epic in scale. One thing I also loved was just Christopher Walken showing up on the screen. I could listen to Christopher Walken talk any day of the week. Florence Pugh, one of the greatest young actresses of this generation, she was in this movie. She had a role as the Emperor's daughter, and she played a big part in the movie, but at the same time, she didn't overshadow any other character. Who I thought was the best character in this film for me was Zendaya. And that was one of my biggest criticisms of Dune 1 was she was a lot in the advertisement, but then of course in the movie she was just in a lot of dream sequences. And I think she only had maybe 5 lines at the end of Dune Part 1 when he first met her. But in this part of the movie, she shone. She was his love interest, and she was just phenomenal on the screen. She is just her presence on the movie screen, the chemistry between her and Timothée Chalamet was palpable. She wasn't this damsel in distress. She wasn't his concubine. She wasn't any of that. She was his equal. She was in love with him. He was in love with her. And her strength really gave this movie a little more resolve. I really enjoyed Zendaya's performance. There was just so many wonderful performances. Dave Bautista once again comes in and just knocks it out of the park. I thought his performance in the first part of Dune was very muted and sedated, but in this one you see him go over the edge. He loses the role of being a tactician to become this insane person trying to win a war at all costs, but at the same time just losing at every turn. Another wonderful performance was Javier Bardem. He was fantastic in this film. He gave it that religious gravas as he just was one of the people worshiping Paul Atreides as the prophet, as the Messiah, as the chosen one. And his performance as his number 2, for the lack of a better term, was just wonderful because he's such an endearing actor. When he's on the screen, he just makes you want to love him as a character. He makes you want to understand his character, and he just does such a phenomenal job. Just the cast, the writing, the directing of this film, top notch. And I went into this movie actually not wanting to like it. Prior to me seeing the film, all of my other movie critic buddies have already dropped their reviews. Very few people waited till Thursday to go see it. They saw an early sneak preview. Been a little under the weather if you can't tell by my voice. But this movie, I tried with all of my might to knock it down a peg, but I couldn't. This is an excellent film. This is a transcendent film. This is a wonderful movie-going experience. When the final credits rolled, and I've done my best to not really spoil the story, because this is something, one, I don't think I have enough time to tell all of the beats of the story, but just tell you how wonderful everyone was in it and just how great it is. This is something you have to experience. This is a movie experience. If you have a chance to see it in IMAX, go check it out in IMAX. If you have a chance to go see it in XD or whatever, go see it. If you have a chance to go see it and sit in those D box seats, I can guarantee you the sound of this movie is just phenomenal. The sound editing, everything about the film just works really well. And it's just a wonderful time at the movie theater. It was just a wonderful movie. It was a masterfully made movie. Everyone keeps saying this is cinema. It's just great. It is a great film. Definitely going to be hard to knock this one out of my top 10, my top 3, my top 1. Right now, this is the film to beat in 2024. I did not see this coming. Everyone said it was great. I denied it because everyone said Dune 1 was great, and I didn't find that to be as wonderful as everyone else thought it was. But this movie is top tier. This is a top tier way to tell a story. I'm excited for the third part to be adapted from the novel Messiah, Dune Messiah. So I'm looking forward to that. And that one will have a little bit of Anna Taylor-Joy. She had a very small role in this film. And I'm so excited to see this film when it comes out. Dune Part 2, I don't have any negatives. This is probably one of the only times that will not have any negatives for a film. It's very hard. It would be very nitpicky of me, and I can't even think of anything that would be negative in this movie, other than it might be a little long for you, right? If you like your movies under 2 hours, you might not like this movie. So who is this movie for? This film is for anyone who loves cinema, who loves films, who loves drama, who loves action, who loves sci-fi. You don't have to be a real big sci-fi fan to come into this movie and enjoy it. This movie is for anyone who loves movies, anyone who loves the movie-going experience. This is the reason why people like me love the movies. This movie is just phenomenal in every which way. I'm really happy to have gone to see it. I'm really happy to be reviewing it right now and giving it the stellar review that it deserves. Definitely check out Dune 2 and definitely subscribe to your boy T. I'm doing my best here. I've been a little under the weather. I'm going to bring you a lot more content, a lot more movie reviews. I've checked out probably 6 or 7 films in the last week or so as I was home trying to recover. So I'm going to definitely bring you some more film reviews for some Netflix films and things of that nature. But until that point, this weekend, definitely go check out Dune Part 2. It is so worth your time. It is a great date movie. It's a great couple movie. It's a great sci-fi single person going to check it out film. You'll definitely not regret it, and you'll thank me later. Till next time, it is your boy T. I'll catch you later.